This is John Locke, and today we're going to be talking about the myth of duplicate content. Now, duplicate content is perhaps the thing that most people misunderstand about SEO. A lot of people have anxiety about it. I think many of you fear having duplicate content more than you fear getting spammy links. And there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt around duplicate content. People think that if they have duplicated content from their site somewhere else on the web, that Google is going to penalize their site. The fact of the matter is Google said in 2008 that there is no duplicate content penalty, at least not in the way that people imagine that there is. Google does not penalize duplicate content. Here's what actually happens. When there is duplicate content, when there are two different pages or more that have the same content on the web, Google is forced to choose which one is the most relevant. So, meaning if you have the same content on different pages, then Google is going to choose which one to rank the highest. Now, there are certain examples of duplicate content that we've gotten questions about, such as if I take blocks of content off of my homepage or my about page and I put it on my Facebook or my LinkedIn page or my Yelp page, am I going to get a duplicate content penalty? The answer to that is no. Google expects you to have some of the same wording across your site. And think about it from a logical standpoint. About 25 to 30% of the web is actually duplicate content. If you really stop and think about it, think about how much stuff is copied just in, the footer section of websites. It's the same thing, right? It's duplicate content. A lot of content is scraped by scraper sites, and these do not hurt you or harm you in any way. Let's first define what Google looks at as duplicate content. Duplicate content in Google's eyes is any blocks of content that are appreciably the same or similar in nature, that appear on the same domain or they appear on other domains. Now, where Google does not care is if you are repeating some of the same content on your different properties or even on your own website. Where Google does care is if you are trying to manipulate search rankings, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's just say, for the sake of clarity, that duplicate content is any time that you take the same block of content and a page is 50% or more the same. Most often you're going to see this in what we call like boilerplate content, where it's kind of the page is duplicated, but you're basically trying to rank like different things. Let's say that we have, for example, some sort of service site. It might be HVAC or electrical or plumbing or a locksmith or auto repair or something like that, but they're trying to target all these different cities in their region or neighborhoods. And what they do is they create these landing pages that are all for specific cities, and they have kind of the same content on them, and then the only thing that is changed out is the city name in the actual title and the URL of the page, and then in the body content, and everything else is basically the same. So if the rest of the site is high content, or high quality content, I should say, and these pages would be considered low quality content. When Google sees that you have boilerplate content and it's just basically duplicated from another page on your site and not much has changed, that's considered low quality content. And I can tell you in most cases that Google is going to choose the home page of the site, or if you have a dedicated page for that particular service, then Google is going to choose that over these types of landing pages. Now, in about 5 or 10% of the time, if you put a little bit of effort into these pages and you actually put some original content on each page, and you maybe say specific things that you've done in that city, or you have reviews from that city, or you talk to different clients from that city, describe different things in that city, maybe actually have like photos of that city, different things like that. Or better yet, if you actually have locations, offices within those cities, then you stand a fighting chance of ranking those. But if you're just copying it, it's not really going to do much. But those are low quality. They're not duplicate content in the way that it's going to get your site penalized. They're duplicate content, but they're basically low quality pages. They're not going to earn your entire website a penalty. If you have high quality content on other pages on your site, then you still can rank for those. But these pages will probably not be selected because Google will see that there's probably better pages to select. So here's some things that can cause duplicate content that you're probably not thinking of when I say duplicate content, or these sorts of things. So if you have protocols on your web address like HTTP, HTTPS, no www, and then www, if you can resolve to different combinations of that and they don't all resolve down into one specific combination, that is duplicate content. Google sees if your website can resolve to HTTP and HTTPS for the same web address. Those are basically, essentially, two separate URLs, and Google sees those as duplicate content. So now they have to decide which one is the actual page that they should rank. So make sure that you have those things fixed. If you have an e-commerce site and you add parameters, or you allow people to search by category, or different things, those different parameters added to the end of the URL can be duplicate content. As well, if you have session IDs, those things can be duplicate content. So Google has to decide which page to rank. Speaking of e-commerce stores, other cases where people ask this question about duplicate content would be, I have content that's on the actual product page, but then there's the product category pages, product tag pages. It might even be on the home page. Google is generally going to pick either the specific product, the category, or the home page. And in most cases, if they can't figure something out, they might choose the shop page or the product category page. Sometimes they'll pick the home page. But again, you're making Google decide which is the definitive, the best page for people searching for different things. So let's talk about doorway pages. So doorway pages are not specifically duplicate content, but they are a type of page that Google does actively penalize. And this is where you write content for a page that is specifically meaning to rank, and then either people can't get what they want, or they think that they're getting something but they're not getting it, or it does a redirect to a different page. So examples of this. Let's say that I have an e-commerce store and I sell, coffee cups, and then instead of trying to rank a page where it's my store page of different coffee cups that you can buy, I write this big long essay on the history of coffee cups and try and rank that instead. But there's no link in there to the actual shop page. There's no actual links to the products to buy. Or it does a redirect to some other page that people aren't expecting to land on, or that doesn't show up in the search results. Those would be examples of doorway pages. That's like a different type of a thing. But, okay, what else is on my list here? So, yeah, like I said, Google is going to choose what they think is the best page out of these things. So boilerplate, not duplicate content, just low quality. Your site is not penalized for duplicate content. Google expects to see it to a degree. Oh, scraper sites. Let's talk about that. Scraper sites, people ask about this one all the time too. They say, should I disavow sites that are scraping my content? And they're taking the blog posts and they're reposting them here. Any blog, any type of site that's reasonably popular probably gets scraped all the time. Google doesn't really, do anything to these. It basically ignores them. These things do not hurt you. They do not help you. Google basically ignores them. They very rarely rank You know, if you have internal links like on your site and they scrape those might link back. Those don't really give you a ton of benefit. You might get, you know, a click here or there sometime, but these Google basically ignores. Now, if somebody is flagrantly stealing your content and like your design, your content, like word for word copying it, then you should file some sort of DMCA takedown. We talked about this in a previous video. If they're just kind of riffing on the same idea, that's not duplicate content. If they steal it word for word, you should probably talk to a lawyer and get them to take it down. So here's something that can, now let's say that you are a website. I've seen this before. Let's say you're a website and you're hurting for content. You want to put content up. You don't want to write your own, but you want to take somebody else's content and put it up on your site. Now, if it's licensed, like meaning if it's going through the AP or routers or something like that, then that is basically looked at as syndicated content. Same thing with press releases. It's syndicated content. It's not necessarily duplicate content. Those are things that are normal in the way that things get circulated throughout news sites. But if you take somebody else's content and put it on your site, or you quote like a big chunk of it and then you want to add like a little commentary on it, think like a site like Daring Fireball that built their whole thing on, they built their whole site on riffing on different people's, quoting pieces of other people's articles and then riffing on that. Big site about Apple products. Could be duplicate content, but they're adding their own original commentary to it. So Google sees it as, you know, hey, there's a little bit of added quality to this. It's not just word for word. But if you did do that, one thing that you would do is you would add a canonical tag to the page. Now, if you're using WordPress, a lot of SEO plugins provide this out of the box. Canonical tags are just a way to say, this is the definitive URL for this page. So if you take somebody else's thing, which I don't advise doing, by the way, and you point that canonical tag toward the original article, you're not going to be hit, or they're not going to be hit. Nobody's going to be hit for like a duplicate content thing. But you're not going to be seen as necessarily, you know, lower quality. Probably not the best thing to do as far as content-wise, but you should always point the canonical tag toward the original source material if that's what you're going to do. Again, which I don't advise. But on your own site, the same thing. If you have repeated things, Google's just going to choose what they think is the best. So if you have sections that repeat, that's probably no big deal. If you're, you know, rewriting something from your site, you might compete with different pages, but it's not going to penalize your whole site, how some people think. There is no duplicate content penalty. Just say it with me now. There's no such thing as duplicate content penalty. You might have low quality, but it's not duplicate content. Let's see if there's anything else on my list I wanted to talk about. Okay, so manipulating rankings. That's where Google cares. Manipulating rankings would be taking the same article or something that's like 95% the same article. And let's say you have a whole bunch of domains that are all very similar. That would be trying to manipulate rankings. Like if you took the same exact article, posted on a bunch of different domains that you own that are all in the same category, you're trying to chew up more of the search results space. That would be something that Google would care about, and that is when they would hit you with a manual penalty. That would not be an algorithmic low quality penalty. That would be them saying, this is a person trying to manipulate the rankings and chew up more space. The only other thing that would happen like algorithmically with that is Google would choose the highest rated, basically like the authority of the website is the highest. Sorry, I got a plane overhead. But if the highest rated site, so the site that is rated the highest, or the site that is the original, it's not always the original, it's the highest ranking or the highest rated site, the one with the most authority, usually the one with the most links coming in, with the best brand. that will be the page that ranks the highest, and the other ones will generally be filtered out of the search results. Last thing I want to talk about is coming back to doorway pages for a second. Let's talk about this with e-commerce specifically, because this is where this happens sometimes. Let's say that you have an e-commerce page. We'll go back to the coffee cup example. Instead of having, let's say, this would be a place where duplicate content or manipulated content or doorway pages would come into play. Let's say that you have a page, you have a site where you're selling coffee cups, and instead of having one page where you have the ability to select different colors of coffee cups, you have different URLs. You have a page that's red coffee cup, blue coffee cup, green coffee cup, those sorts of things. That would be an attempt to manipulate rankings, and that would be really dangerously close to a doorway page. And Google has gone on record saying before, it's better to have one high quality generic page than have a whole bunch of mediocre pages where you're trying to manipulate keywords, and that's the case of that. So give people what they want. If you're going to have like specific landing pages for different things, make sure that there's original content and that people can get what they want. Match searcher intent, have original content, don't just have boilerplate stuff. And again, you don't get hit with a duplicate content penalty that wipes out your site. Those pages are seen as low quality. They probably won't rank. They're not really going to do anything for you. But duplicate content is not a thing unless you're trying to chew up more of the search rankings and manipulate rankings in a way that's unnatural. I hope that answers that question. Why do people get confused with this? The biggest reason I think is they read random blog posts and repeat it. So please don't be one of those people. Go straight to the source. Google has a whole page on what duplicate content is. If you also look at if you Google duplicate content penalty, you look at all the top results on that, you will see that it is very much a verified myth. So I hope that answers that question. My name's John Locke. We help manufacturing and industrial companies here at Lockdown Design and SEO. If you have an SEO question, drop it in the comments below. We'll do our best to answer it. And until next time, peace.